Okie dokie. Now what I'm going to do is a little different. We're up to this shot here where this guy's climbing back in the window. Okay. What I want to do is take this MP4 of this shot. And by the way, I can see an issue right there with the cast shadow level. Yep. Well, no, wait a second. That is not the cast shadow level. Interesting. Well, there's the cast shadow. But when I turn it... Okay. Looks like it's... Why the heck is the cast shadow getting darker? Wait a second. We better put this in preview mode. Okay. Never mind. There's a problem. Originally, the body shadow was drawn in there, so you see it in the fast preview, but when you actually do the render, it doesn't show up. So that's good. I won't bother trying to explain that in detail. But okay, so here's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is I don't want to use the plastic tool right now because if I do, there's already a couple shots in this fairly long sequence that use the plastic tool, and so we have these keyframes. Obviously, I could do it on another level, actually, but as an experiment, I want to try doing it in Blender. So the idea is that I'm going to take this video, map this to a plane, and then do the secondary animation kind of like you would with the plastic tool, but do it in Blender. So, what the heck, it'll be fun. Now, I'm not going to use Blender 2.8 because I don't want to deal with the minutia of working with Blender 2.8 right now. I want to focus just on a task that I do know how to accomplish, so let's just go ahead and accomplish it. I want to go images as planes, and we're going to animate render, and I believe we want shot number 94. Okay, so let's go. We're going to animate image sequences, but this is actually a video, so I'm going to make it shadeless. So, will this work? I don't know. It appears to have worked. Let's see what happens when we animate. Okay, nothing happens. So, we'll extend this out a little bit, and while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and save this as 0094-279, just so I remember that that was done in Blender 2.79. Okay, so now the question becomes, how do we get it so we can see this guy? And that's a great question. In 2.79, when we import images as planes, which you can do, by the way, in Blender 2.8, obviously, what we want to do is struggle through some stuff that often is kind of clunky in Blender and probably shouldn't be, but so we have to solve this. This, for me, the default behavior you would think would be that it would animate. And it's interesting because I don't know if this was actually mapped to the plane as a material. It looks like it was. So therefore, I think the situation is probably right here. Okay, this says it's 43 frames, and it does say auto refresh, and it is a texture. So I guess the first thing I would want to look at right now is what is the difference here and here, such that we do see it here but we don't see it here. Okay, so I'm sort of going over some stuff that maybe I don't necessarily need to, but I'm pretty sure if I hit material, that's going to help. Yes. Okay, and I think if you hit material, since it is on a material, now it works. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to save early, save often. Okay, I'm going to actually adjust my camera right now while I'm thinking about it. Whoops. Yes, because we're doing broadcast. Well, wait a second. This appears to be... Okay, so it must be the distance from the camera is the reason the picture's smaller than the camera. That would make sense. Because for it to be the same size, it would actually have to be right up at the position of the camera. So let's just size this up. And so we know we're not like losing any resolution or anything. Okay, so now what we're going to do is let's just subdivide this quite a few times. Subdivide, 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 subdivide. I would say something like that's probably going to be okay. All right, and now what we're going to do is let's get to this point right here. And this is risky behavior, I will grant you, because what we're going to do, we're going to get to here, and yeah, this is definitely going to be kind of fun. Okay, so the idea would be that if proportional editing is on in projected 2D mode, all right, we got a couple options here. We could create shape keys, but why don't we just use AnimAll to animate points? Okay, if we're going to do that, then it's kind of important that we select all of our points right now and create a key. Okay, so now we're going to get to this spot right there, and we're going to create another key. So now what I want to do is make sure I can see in the dope sheet what's going on. So what I want to do is put this on 2s. Now my theory is that because the background is so dark, we have some latitude to do some wiggling of these pixels, and we won't really see it when we have our final render. So let's make this, yeah. So we're going to go, actually let's do it this way. We'll be really fancy schmancy about this. Let's go, let's grab this stuff. Let's click here, and we're going to make sure that it's going to rotate on the cursor. Okay, so now if we make this small, okay, so yeah, what I think I would do here is I would go like this. I want to grab as much, I want to use as little of the proportional editing tool as possible, actually. So yeah, a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, cool, that works. So now let's go rotate. Rotate. Okay, now that was a mistake, actually, because, okay, and when I hit undo, that's interesting. Blender, okay, I'm not going to even try to figure that one out. Okay, so now we're on this keyframe. What we need to do is insert a key. Okay, I believe we need to get out of edit mode, and now let's just look. Okay, so again, I hate to say it, but you know, you get moving fast here and you make critical errors. So I made a critical error. Right now we have the deformation essentially baked into our character. We could go back and grab this keyframe, but that's okay. Let's go rotate, insert. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move this 2 frames ahead. Yes, and here we're going to duplicate this key. So sorry about the clunkiness of that. All right, and then here we're going to essentially do the same thing again. Now, having done that, we should be able to see what that's going to look like. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, so now what we want to do is do the same thing over on the other side. Okay, so Control. Let's grab all this stuff. Let's put the cursor there. And we're going to do a little rotation. This is going to be very subtle. Remember, this bulging out here, you're not going to see that because it's not included in the render. So now we're going to go to the next key and just move it back. And then we're going to correct for that little problem. Again, hit insert, and now if we jump out of edit mode, and then let's take these two keyframes, we're going to box select them. So we're basically getting the benefit of the plastic tool without the plastic tool. In Blender. Okay. And now we should be able to see our character do what we wanted him to do. Okay. So now I'm frustrated because it turns out that, as near as I can tell, if you went back in history right now and examined every step I took, you probably will determine that I made the mistake. Okay, so this isn't a Blender thing. But it does appear that the one keyframe didn't really take. But you know what? That's kind of okay, I'm thinking, because let's see if this works. Yeah, that's actually perfect. Let's just go with that. Okay, so box select this baby, and let's duplicate here, duplicate here, duplicate here. So I basically want this to sustain through the whole shot. And the original shot was, gosh, it reported that it was 43 frames long. Let's just see. Yeah, that looks about right. So that means this should be good to go. So now what we can do is, let's first of all save our work, and then we need to come back here to the render settings. And usually when I want to have no doubt about how things are going to turn out, I use AVI JPEG just because it's a real mature codec that works great in Blender. So now I'm going to go to L, Animate, Render, and again we're dealing with, was this 93 or 94? I believe it was 94. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go 94. I don't even know if I need to. Actually, I think Blender's going to add that twice to the title. So I'm going to go 94. So now that helps out too, because it's going to be an AVI instead of an MP4, so we can actually have both files in the folder, and we're not trying to overwrite, because obviously the MP4 version of it is right here in the viewport. One of the cool things about this sort of technique, though, is that you could actually take the grease pencil and add more secondary animation over the top of this if you wanted to. So anyway, I'm going to scooch this back to, yeah, I can see I actually want to go ahead and extend this even further. Let's just do it right if we're going to do it right, folks. Let's do it right. So let's go to 62. Boom. 62. Save that. Okay, so now I should be able to hit Control F12, and Blender's going to render that out, and then we can drag it into our edit in Blender 2.8. We'll be good to go. Good to go, folks. Good to go. So if you were ever wondering how you can get the same sort of secondary animation benefits that you get with the OpenToonz plastic tool in Blender, this is a really good way to do it. It kind of underscores the fact that, unfortunately, what's jumping out at me a lot is that anything I can do in OpenToonz, I seem to be able lately to do as well or better with the combination of Blender and Krita. So that does not bode well for OpenToonz, especially because it is pretty buggy. I won't get into that. I can't remember if on this video I mentioned some things that this very shot, when I rendered it out the first time, there was like a whole section of it that just didn't appear in the render, and then when I killed OpenToonz and restarted it, it reappeared. So the good news with OpenToonz is usually when it acts stupid, whatever it is fixed by just restarting OpenToonz. That's really good, because it's very rare that you lose work. You know, I've lost work because of failing to save, but I haven't really lost much work at all because of stupidity in OpenToonz. Usually when it acts stupid, it's not disastrous. However, it does act stupid kind of a lot. Alright, so Blender 2.8 is coming up. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the video edit. Boom. And yes, right here, yeah, that's 93. So what we need to do is go up here and grab shot number 94. But we're going to grab the motion JPEG version of it. And that should pop right in there, no problem. And let's see how it plays. Okay, so that's kind of typical with Blender. One thing you want to do is save your work and reload it. If once you add a new video to the sequencer, it seems to want to it doesn't refresh under the hood, you might say. So it's almost like if they didn't want to fix that bug, then the thing to do would be to make it default behavior in Blender that whenever you add anything to the sequencer timeline, behind the scenes Blender would add it, save the file, and reload the file, all in the space of less than 1 second. Okay, so we do see some strangeness here. I can't really be 100% sure that wasn't in my render. I think one thing that would be interesting though is let's try this. Let's see what happens if we open this in Blender 2.8. Object mode. How to... You know what, let's not. There's too many things in Blender 2.8 that I just don't know how to instantly fix. So this seems to be looking pretty good, and the fact that I resaved it seems to have solved the problem. So she says something. I don't even know what her dialogue line is there. So when she is barking at him, we're going to hear this guy climbing in. And probably that shot is taking too long. So we'll probably just cut that back a little bit. Yeah, that's still too long. Boom. Yeah, that tells the story. And you wanna edit tightly. Okay, so that's that. All right, so quick review. And again, I'm not even going to try to do this in Blender 2.8. However, if you're wondering how can I, and I'm sure it works very similarly, if not the same, but you got to remember too, to animate those points on the plane, I use the AnimAll plugin, and you may not have the AnimAll plugin. I assume it's been updated for 2.8, but I don't know that. So the basic workflow is either just bring in a plane and then drag and drop an image on it, or this, which comes default with Blender 2.8, but you have to enable it. So the answer to the question of how do you do that is you bring in an image, you subdivide it, and then you just animate stuff. But I think the key question here would be, what if you want to animate something and really have a lot of control over what gets moved? And the answer would be to everything that you want to have remain stiff, grab it like so, and then put your mouse wherever you want your anchor point to be, and then make sure that you hit the period key so that you are rotating, you know, around the cursor. Now if you hit the comma, that would be okay too. Now you're rotating around the center of mass. So frankly, this is probably more controllable by a pretty good margin than the plastic tool, actually. So very useful for secondary animation. Obviously it would be even more easy to control if we didn't have the background baked in. I kind of got away with murder on this one because the background is so dark that you're not going to notice it wiggling, even though in fact it was wiggling in the background. So we'll take one last look at that and then call it good for this particular video. do 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 do. And how long have we had? Yeah, it's a 20-minute job. Okay, so again, as you can see, if you really look close, you can see the background is wiggling around, but you'd never see that in the show. So, there you go. And the thing is, you could go even further if you wanted to have him do a little turn of the head or something here. We just select the points in the plane around his head, and then just don't make it too big. But the thing about secondary animation like that that's cool is normally if you moved his head, you would expect his shoulders to move a little bit. The body moves as a unit, so it's not a big deal to go in and do these sorts of plastic tool types of things in Blender. So anyway, that's it for now, and as always, I'm really, really sure there will be more later.